Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. My name is David Jones. I do this every Friday at 2:30 UK time, so just as the US markets are opening, which the payrolls an hour ago, massively above expectations I think in the end, weren't they? Can't even remember what they were. I think the expectation was for, was it 175? And they did 270? Something like that. Anyway, let's see if I can find out. I'm sure somebody in the chat will know. I did have it in my head a minute ago and I've completely forgotten what it was. No, whatever. But a bit of volatility for the stocks ahead of the US Open. So this is the Nasdaq. This was the move in the Nasdaq. Let's make that a 5-minute chart. Let's have a look at that. There we go. So there's the announcement. So the market, the Nasdaq, did a 150-point range in the 5 minutes following the announcement. So as usual, what we do in these sessions every week is take a look at the major announcements for next week. There's a couple of major announcements. US inflation, I think, is the theme for the week next week. Have a look at major markets, indices, FX, crypto, of course, oil, natural gas, gold, silver. And if there's any stuff that you would like looking at, if you put it in the chat, in the questions on YouTube, we'll take a look as we're going through this. Otherwise, that's it, isn't it? Right, let's get cracking. Let's just get some of the housekeeping done. Then we can get into it. So this presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread betting, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, right, so next week. Next week is US inflation is the big one, I think, and that's on Tuesday. So we've got the CPI, the consumer inflation, Tuesday. That would be interesting. You know, inflation is still, I think, a big theme for markets, not as big as it was a year ago. Obviously, or a couple of years ago, whenever it was, but it's still a theme. You know, we're still markets, investors, still very much focused on what might happen with US interest rates and interest rates around the world. Obviously, inflation has a bearing on that. So that's US CPI on Tuesday of next week, and then we have the PPI, the Producer Price Index. So it can be, again, you know, it's how much extra or not producers are paying for products, commodities, all that sort of stuff. So again, there's a bit of an inflation twist in there. So Tuesday and Thursday are the major ones to watch for me. So we'll see what the market thinks of that. I think it'd be interesting this afternoon, once these payrolls are out of the way. Well, the payrolls are out of the way. Once the market's open properly and things have calmed down, I'll talk a bit about my trading. It's been a good week for me. This week, again, it's been a really, apart from the first couple of weeks of January, trading so far this year has been good for me. I went short the Nasdaq on, I think it was Monday. I was short the Nasdaq on Monday, closed it, made 377 points profit on that one. And that's my second biggest winner on index trading this year. I did go short again somewhere in here, got stopped out of that. And I went short again yesterday. So I am short the Nasdaq at the moment, which is against the big trend. But I do have a lot of US stock positions open, so I'm quite happy to sort of do the odd short to hedge it. But it's been a good week overall. I've been long T-bonds. I'm still long T-bonds. I've been long those a while, actually. And they've done well. US Treasuries, again, a bit of volatility over this interest rate announcement. But lots to look at. We've got gold at all-time highs. You know, I mean, that's been quite a phenomenal move in gold. You know, it's up, what's that? 10% would be 2.2. So it's up about 7% over the last month or so, the price of gold, taking out the old all-time highs. I think it's really interesting, gold up here, you know, because whenever we've seen gold push near or above 2,100 going back to August 2020, it's never spent that long up there. So this time feels a bit different. I'm going to do a video for gold over the weekend, looking at it in a bit more depth, because I do wonder if this time is different for gold. You know, if you can see on the chart here, whenever we've traded up, as I say, towards 2100, it's been smashed back, but it's not getting smashed back at the moment. So let's see. I think that's a really interesting market. And of course, the crazy world of crypto. We'll take a look at that in a bit more detail in a second. But trading near the previous all-time highs. I said in the WhatsApp group this week that if Bitcoin goes through 70k, even I'm going to buy it. I'm just got to jump on board the HODL Express and see where it goes next. But more of that in a sec. A quick word from the sponsor, which is me. I work with a broker. If you sign up for the broker using my link, bit.ly/DavidTrade, the link is in the description. You'll have access to webinars and stuff that I run with those. So that's it. I trade with these guys because it's tight spreads. So all my index trading I do with those, very tight spreads, no frills platform, perfect for me. So if you visit that to find out more. The only other thing I'm going to talk about is the WhatsApp group. I've been running that now for a year. I opened it up last summer to anyone can join. It used to be just people who'd done my trading course. Because to be honest, I did it as support for people who've been on the course. Because you do a course, but you still have loads of questions afterwards. So I ran it as a support group for people who've been on the course. I didn't want it getting, what's the word I'm looking for? Polluted is the wrong word, but I didn't want lots of silly questions in there, so I kept it to people who did the course. I opened it up last year. I made it chargeable. There are no silly questions. It's all working quite well, I think. But if you want to join that, you can join it. You get a daily update from me every morning. Markets to watch, trades I'm running. I do an update in the afternoon, so levels I'm watching for US indices for trading. So I flag up things like the Nasdaq short I did earlier in the week, and US stocks. Now, I talked a bit about US stocks. I'll talk about this a bit more. It's a big thing for me this year is US stocks. At the moment, I'm running this slightly out of date, this spreadsheet, because I've done a couple of trades since then. But at the moment, I'm running about 40 open positions on US stocks. I want to continue to add these medium-term trades. I don't need to watch the market every day. It's done incredibly well. I started doing this the 18th of December. Amazon was the first stock that I did back then. And it's up around about 25% on margin used. You know, obviously, you know, it's been a good market for trading US stocks because the market, you know, has been going up. So it's been a great market. You know, as I said probably last week, if you trade US stocks and you haven't made money this year, there's something really wrong with your strategy. You know, because the market has been so good. So, like I say, it's up about 25% on margin used since the 18th of December. I don't think it will carry on at that rate because the market will change. But overall, you know, it's done really well. That's a breakdown, a snapshot of all the performance of the different stocks. That's what the P&L looks like. That was basing it off £200 risk per trade is what I've done it. You could do it with £20 risk. You could do it with £2,000 risk. You know, it's a liquid market. You can trade bigger in the US if you want to. But that's my US stock stuff. So I talk about that in the WhatsApp group as well when I'm about to do trades. I'll mention the trade I'm doing, the stops I'm looking at, that sort of stuff. And there's a running Q&A session throughout the day. So that's that. That is the WhatsApp group. You can join that. If you use the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month. And it's access to me day in and out every day. So there you go. That's that. Right, that's what it looks like. Okay, so to find out more, go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. The link is in the description. I do a weekly newsletter, which is free. If you're not signed up for that, if you go to the website, there's a box on the home page for you to put your details in and you can sign up. Right, let's do it. Let's have a look. What's going on? Where should we start? I'm going to go a little bit different this week. I'm going to start with the price of gold, I think, this week. Let's talk about that. Then we'll look at some of these other markets. So I really wasn't expecting this. You know, if we look at gold, it's been a little bit, if we take the latest surge out of the way, it's been a little bit boring for me, the price of gold. Going back 3.5 years, we've got a big old range, you know, up near 2100, down to sort of 1700, and it just bangs around. But you know, things have been a little bit different over the last couple of weeks. So you know, we broke out through that high there, whatever that was, end of December high at 2088. And here we are now at all-time highs. We've set another fresh all-time high today. And like I say, what we're seeing, it's this idea of acceptance, where in the past we've had rejection of prices in the 2100 area. The market has turned around really quickly, but not this time. Here we go. Is this the start of the next great bull market in gold? It doesn't make that much sense why it's so strong, but who am I to argue with the market? So I think it's really interesting. I'd rather buy a dip. It's very overbought at the moment. This is the RSI down here. This is the most overbought the RSI has been since July 2020. So we've got to go back 3.5 years to see the RSI that overbought on the price of gold. So I'd rather buy a dip. I think it will be interesting to see where the dip goes. So as usual, the sort of thing I would look for is a bit of a and then a bounce, and then I'll be a buyer. So it'll be interesting to see where the buyers come in if this thing does dip. So yeah. Now, as usual, I can't delete that little squiggle. I don't want to delete. So an interesting market next week, particularly with this US inflation numbers coming out, but an absolute barnstorming move on the price of gold. So let's see what happens next week and see if there is a dip to buy. While we're on gold, let's take a look at silver. Silver, it's not been as exciting, but I think I mentioned last week, or maybe the week before, 22, we've seen 22 has been something of a floor for the price of silver since Jan this year. And again, back to here, back to November. So, it has bounced off that level again. Perhaps it's going to struggle up here, silver up. But if we look at the old highs from whenever that was, December, up around 24.60, we saw the price of silver struggle a little up there. So let's see. So silver, nowhere near as exciting for me as the price of gold, but a really interesting market with this break on gold. Let's see what happens with that. Let's jump back and look at stock markets. It is the same old for me in stock markets. Same old story. The trend is up. I want to buy the dip. That's it. And here we are, fresh all-time highs for the S&P today. What else can you say? As usual, let's have a quick look. Which way do we think people are positioned on the S&P at the moment? Your typical trader. Would you like to take a wild stab in the dark and see what traders think? The market's going up. It's been going up since October 22. It's been going up in this trend since October 23. It's gone up, I think, every week this year, it must be. So this is a market that's going up, isn't it? Now, which way do we think people are positioned? What a surprise. Popular UK broker, 71% of clients who have a trade on this market are short. People can't trade with trends. Big reason that people will lose. Everyone's trying to pick the top, or not everyone's trying to pick the top, but a large chunk of people are trying to pick the top. So for me, even though I'm short the NASDAQ, trying to hedge off some of my risk in my equities, my net position on US equities on the S&P is long, and here we are, bang, bang, even as we speak, in the current few minutes, we're at all-time highs for the S&P. So I'd still be a buyer. What can you say? We saw the market sell off this week. That on Monday, I thought it was interesting. On Monday, the S&P set a fresh all-time high, sold off. Where did it stop? The previous major low. Turned around eventually on Tuesday, and we've seen the market springboard out again to all-time highs. So what can you say? Just buy the dip so far, at least. NASDAQ, same old, and NASDAQ hasn't quite set a fresh all-time high. Oh, it's just on it now, isn't it? Even as we speak. So let's say the old highs. Actually, that's not the old high. That's an out-of-hours high. So what the old in-session high, I think it has broken the in-session high. That was from last Friday. So it's having looks like it's having a little probe just now. No, actually, that was out of hours as well. So we haven't yet seen it break the official in-hours high, which is about 18,340 or thereabouts. Let's see what happens. But again, with the old doodah, the NASDAQ, the trend is up, isn't it? It's interesting. I was watching something else before I came on, and some of the old heavyweights, the likes of Google. Look at that. And I'm long Google at the moment, but that's not had a good month, 6 weeks or so. So some of these, big heavyweight tech companies are weighing a little bit on the Nasdaq, perhaps. Apple, poor old Apple, with their $4,000 VR specs, you know, is down. What's it down over the last 3 months? It's down from about 200 to 170. It's down 15%, something like that, since the middle of December. Nvidia, I think, is that up again today? Nvidia is holding up the whole US market. There it goes. Crazy. So what have they done since their earnings? So on their earnings, they gapped higher, opened at 750, and here they are at 950. Amazing. But yeah, some of these constituent stocks in the Nasdaq, you know, some of the big old names are having a bit of struggle. So maybe, you know, a bit further down the line, that will be perhaps some of the first signs of trouble coming into the stock market rally when some of these the bigger names, you know, have struggled. I don't know. Let's see what happens. But at the moment, you know, I am a buy the dipper. If we did get a dip this afternoon, let's see what happens. You know, some of the levels to watch. You know, something I would watch. Like I say, I am short at the moment, but if I was going to be a buyer, I'd be watching yesterday's lows, yesterday's in-session lows, around about 18.1 on the Nasdaq, so a couple of 100 points lower than where we are now. So if we have a bit of a volatile afternoon, it could be interesting. Let's see what happens. So that's the Nasdaq. The old Nikkei as well, doing well. Japanese 225. The trend on the Nikkei has been up since 2023. All-time highs on the Nikkei. Finally breaking those late 80s, early 1990s highs, whatever they were. So, yeah, I mean, the market pushed to a fresh all-time high on Wednesday of this week. Has backed off. Again, I'd be a buyer of the dip. You know, I think an interesting level to watch next week. These old lows, about 38,900-ish, perhaps is an interesting level to watch. But Nikkei, bullish. DAX, the old Germans, quite messy, late Jan into middle of Feb, but again, fresh all-time highs for the DAX. And so all these stock markets are all really positive, and the trend is your friend and all that, and the trend is up. So what are you going to do? UK, the FTSE, as usual, the FTSE defies all these upstart global markets. The FTSE's not going to go up when the rest of the world's going to go up. The FTSE's going to stay stuck in a sideways range. So you've got to suck it up. So the FTSE, boring market, the FTSE. Very rarely look at it. I did trade it back then. I remember trading it back here, but you know it's pretty sideways, isn't it? You know, it's just very different makeup, of course, to the likes of even the DAX, the S&P, Nasdaq. Very different makeup, the FTSE, and a little bit boring for the UK's blue chip stock market index. The Russell, I thought this was interesting. I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group this morning. I don't look at the Russell very often. The US small cap index, but you know, sideways since June 22, bang, 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 breaks out late December, sells off, quite a deep sell-off, and bang, here we go again. So there is strength in these US small caps. So you know, even as we speak, it's at nearly a 2-year high, the Russell 2000 index. So I think that was interesting. That there is a bit of breadth, you know, to the strength at the moment. The Italian, for fans of the Italian index, mamma mia. I think I say that every time we look at the Italian index. Look at that. It's looking like a rocket, the old Italian index. Up 10% since the end of January. So there you go. I've got no idea what sort of companies are in that index. So, but that's doing incredibly well. All-time highs. Let's look at this. Hong Kong, what's that doing? Not a lot. Hang Seng, no, that's still pretty weak, isn't it? Maybe it'll turn around. China, I think the China index has turned around a bit. I was quite bearish on that. But we've seen some real strength, you know. So maybe China is by the dip. Oh, the Nifty 50. We've got loads of indices in here. Nifty 50, the Indian index. It's a global bull market, apart from the FTSE. So the old Nifty is doing so. I see I've got ads turned on this live stream. I keep saying I'm going to have to turn them off, but I haven't actually realised how to do them. So I'm not sure what happens if I'm talking and there's an ad on. Anyway, so the Nifty 50 doing really well. FTSE 250, oh, poor old UK. FTSE 250, not so exciting. So there we go. Stock markets, you know, still a major focus for me. I've got all these stock trades on. These US markets are pushing higher again now. Wow, look at that. So yeah, I'm still by the dip overall. So what are you going to do? That's that. That's those. What else should we look at? Dollar index. I did buy that this week. I got stopped this week on the dollar index. They're not all winners. You have to have losers along the way. But ideally, your winners are bigger than your losers. I did think the dollar was going to bounce. But no, here we are. Let's have a look on the dailies. Here we go. So we were having, let's zoom in. We had been having, if I can draw this trend line a bit better, you know, we did have a bit of a run up in the dollar index. And I thought, I wonder if we get a bounce, but no is the answer. So the dollar has slid back to its lowest since the 15th of Jan. So it's, what's that, nearly a 2-month low on the dollar index. Still looks pretty weak. I mean, that will be helping lift gold. That's not the only reason gold's going up, of course. Yeah, weaker dollar. Perhaps it's been a bit overstretched. You know, looking at the RSI down here, probably oversold. We haven't been this oversold for where we got to go back to, at least last summer, and we did have quite an enormous rally off there. Let's see. I still think we'll have this index snap back, the dollar index, but not today, at the moment anyway. So yeah, I got stopped out of that. Let's see what happens next week. I still do fancy buying it because I think the correction here is over. It's fallen out of the trend. Maybe it just goes back to being sideways again. I don't know. So yeah, there's the dollar index. Pound against the dollar, obviously, weaker dollar. Stuff like the pound goes up. Here we go. Pound against the dollar is at its highest since July. And again, that had been pretty boring for much of this year. I hadn't traded that much at all, but that's got a bit of a move on. So it's quite a big break. So we are through these old highs from December. I would probably have to buy the dip on that if I was trading that. There we go. That's done really well. So that has been going out for much of March. If I was a buyer at the moment, you know, the closest I'd have my stop, maybe 128, which is the low for today. I'd probably prefer to have it a bit further away, but that's a big move, relatively speaking, in the pound. The euro, I'm guessing, is similar sort of moves. Yeah, I mean, the euro has been interesting because the trend has been up since September 22. Again, a bit boring and a bit drifty, but has turned around. This 107, this ended up being a false break through 107 on the 14th of Feb. And here we are, back up to where it was the middle of Jan. So some interesting moves there, I think, in these markets. What else is interesting worth looking at? Should we look at Bitcoin as we're on the currencies? So Bitcoin, what's that? Dailies. I mean, a phenomenal run for Bitcoin. Great trend. You know, we looked at this trend at various points last year. Bang, 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 bang. It's really accelerated over the last month or so. And here we are at the all-time highs. So is this the time to dump your Bitcoin? Because this is exactly where it ran out of steam, pretty much in October 22. So are we going to see the same thing happen again? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what happens. But 69, 70k, really interesting levels to watch for Bitcoin. If we break through here, do we have the old FOMO, the fear of missing out? Suddenly every man and his dog wants to be in the world of crypto. And everyone's, again, back to saying how much money they've made on Bitcoin and everyone else wants to buy and the thing runs to 100k plus. Who knows? But I think it'd be interesting. I think if it breaks 70 today or next week, perhaps we do get a bit more momentum in this market and see what happens. As usual, I'd rather buy a dip, but we're not getting much in the way of dips at the moment. But no, a really interesting market to watch Bitcoin next week. And like I said, I will buy it. If it gets through 70,000, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm going to join the crypto faithful, just in case it goes to 1 million. But let's see. Let's see what happens. But, you know, interesting market. What about Ethereum? I haven't looked at that in years. Does that still exist, Ethereum? Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Nearly 4 grand on Ethereum. So back to where it was December 21. Yeah, so there we go. What can you say? Crypto's back. Oil. I did trade oil this week. Was it this week or last week? I came out earlier this week. So I did trade oil. I did okay in it. I did think it was going to run a lot higher. It's gone a bit messy, I think, over the last week or so, the oil price. Because it was a really good trend, and I was wondering, I was sort of talk about it in the WhatsApp group every day or every other day, and I was wondering, were we going to get finally the break of $80? You know, $80 has been a ceiling for crude oil since middle of November. And I thought, oh, do we see that break? And then It did break. Hang on a second. The suspense is killing me. There we go. So it did break last Friday, but we've had no follow through again. It's just drifted. So I do wonder, is the trend getting a bit tired in oil? I don't know. The trend is still up though, so I'd still be a buyer of the dip with a stop maybe the other side of 77. But if we look at it on the dailies, get rid of that. Let's just remove some of these things. There we go. So we can see the trend, but you can see it has been a bit scrappy and struggly over the last week. I mean, in the great scheme of things, on the daily chart, the trend is up, you know, picking up on these December lows. So I would still, you know, from a more medium-term point of view, be a buyer of oil. If it got knocked back to 75, I'd be a buyer. It's just been a bit of a scrappy week, it feels like, for me, for oil. Let's see. Natural gas. I hate natural gas. Every time I talk about natural gas, I've got to say that. I did a video on natural gas earlier this week. Completely jinxed the price. Completely jinxed the uptrend. I did the video about then. So look at that lovely uptrend in natural gas on the hourlies. Ba-bang. I think it's an interesting market, though. You know, we've seen the thing drop 10% over the last couple of days. If you thought the drop was overdone, I think it's an interesting buy. If I was buying it, I would probably have a stop at least the other side of 165. For me, I do hate this market though, so I don't trade it very often, which is, you know, the psychological problem I've got with natural gas. But yeah, it's interesting. We had the little trend chugging along, and it's fallen out of the trend. On the dailies, you know, if you know, to put it into some context, that's where we've been over the last few years in natural gas. I don't think we have to worry about natural gas going back to $10 anytime soon. But that's the little trend that had been chugging along. So perhaps we'll have another go at $2. I am going to trade it, I think. I'm going to try and power through the psychological issues I have with natural gas and trade it and see if we get a move up to 2. But let's see. You know, let's see what happens with natural gas. I mean, it is, as we all know, it is a really volatile market. So, but an interesting one, I think, to watch into next week. Heating oil. I think heating oil on the dailies is an interesting market. So heating oil, traded this a bit this year. I think I've had one loser, one winner, but the winner made more than the loser, so it did all right. But the trend on heating oil, you know, going back to May 23 is up, and we've come back down to the trend line. Boom, boom, boom. So yeah. So if I was a buyer now, if I was a buyer off the dailies, I'd want a wide stop. You know, I would probably go middle of December, lows for a stop. But I think that's an interesting market to watch. And for me, it looks like the correction is over. Bang, bang, bang. You know, that correction. So I think it's interesting, heating oil in its own little way. And that's it. Now, just have a look at some other markets that are interesting that I've flagged up this week in a WhatsApp group. Coffee, I thought. Interesting market. Great trend. Back to 2023 on coffee. Bang, bang, bang. Yesterday, it hit fresh all-time highs or multi-year highs. I don't know what they are. But anyway, it's come off quite heavily today. I think this is an interesting market to watch next week. See if there's an opportunity to buy the dip. Cocoa, which is the market I always look at and never buy. I mean, what a trend in cocoa over years. A little bit boring this week, cocoa, but interesting to see where that goes next week. And there was another one, cotton. That was it. Cotton. I should have bought this. I'm going to buy this actually. I should have bought this back here. I was talking to somebody about cotton back here. I think I'm going to buy it because it's come back to the old support. And you know, things happen. You never get around to buying something, and the thing has taken off. I think it's interesting that it's broken out, it's come back, and it's broken out again. It's pretty volatile. But for me, is this breakout in cotton the start of the next move higher? I don't know, but I'm quite like how it's trading. So for me, I'm thinking about being a buyer, and I would have a stop probably the other side of 88 at the moment based off the daily. So I think there's interesting stuff going on in that market. And that's it really. If I have a look at my US stock trades, let's see what's delivered. Oh, General Electric. What a dream this trade has been. This is my best performer. I've been in that trade since 8th of January. Oh, it just goes up every day. And wouldn't it be easy if all trades were like that? I should have bought some more. I was going to buy some more today, but they've jumped up again. Anyway, whatever. Up 4% today. That's been a really good performer. And you know, I don't know if I said it. I think I said it in the WhatsApp group that 84% of my profit trading US stocks so far this year has come from 20% of the trades, and plenty of us will be familiar with that 80-20 rule. 20% of your staff produce 80% of your profits. So, most of my profits have come from about 10 trades, 8 to 10 trades out of 40. And that's perfectly sensible. There'll be a lot of stuff that just goes nowhere. But what I want to do, the whole idea of me trading these US stocks is to now and again catch one of these little monkeys, like General Electric, that just takes off. So that's the biggest riser for me today at 5%, but it's done fantastically well. DHI, I've been in that for, since about here. That's doing well. What's not doing so well for me today? Oh, Eli Lilly, I came out of those. CNC, I bought those. They've done all right, but they're off a little bit today. Dollar Tree, I'm short Dollar Tree because of the trend. That has been going against me. But loads to watch in the old US stock. So for me, the big focus going into next week is still going to be stock markets. Here we are at all-time highs in the S&P, all-time highs in the NASDAQ. Everything is rosy. So let's see what happens. So what we'll do now, we'll take a look at the stuff that you want looking at. How are all these little trades doing? Up 27% now. Past performance is no guarantee of the future, of course. We'll take a look at the stuff you want looking at. If there's any, what was I going to say? If you want to join the WhatsApp group, use the code YouTube. It costs you 40 quid for a month, £2 a day for a month to try it out and see what you think. It's well worth it. So try that out. If you have any questions, you can drop me an email. There's a contact form on the website, or email me dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk for any questions. I won't be here next Friday. There's no live stream next Friday because I'm away next week, or the end of next week, beginning of the week after. So I'll be back in 2 weeks. But for those on the WhatsApp group, normal service continues as usual. Right, let's have a look at some of the stuff you want looking at. Emerging trend in pound against the dollar. Yeah, I mean, it could be, couldn't it? A lot depends on this dollar index, obviously. Dollar index is still getting hammered, isn't it? But, that break in the pound, that's a big break, relatively speaking. But saying that, we did have these breaks, didn't we? In December, broke through the highs from late November, broke a bit higher later in December, and then went sideways. Let's see if it ends up being a real break or a false break. And of course, you never know. There'll be a whole bunch of idiots out there telling you how to predict real breaks and false breaks. Absolute nonsense. You only ever know after the fact. So for me, I'd quite happily buy a dip in pound against dollar. But absolutely, it is bullish. It's trading at its best levels since whenever, middle of summer. So I would buy the dip in that. Interesting market to watch next week. There is a lot to watch at the moment. I think at the beginning of this week, I remember thinking, there's not really a lot out there. But, with some of the volatility we've seen this week, lots of markets have, I think, got interesting again. So, let's see. Can we have a look at Devon? DVN, Devon Energy. I am short at 43. Should I be worried? I don't know. Depends how many you're short. I would go short. The trend has been down, isn't it? The trend has been down in Devon Energy. It's having a go, but again, you've got to be patient. Well, you don't have to be patient. One of the things I have learned over the years is to be patient. It very rarely goes the right way straight away, in my experience. So for me, if I didn't have a trade on, I wouldn't go short yet. If I did go short, let's say on Monday, I would want to stop probably above 48. So I think it's interesting, but I've got shorts that aren't going the right way for me. Where is it? IFF, there you go. I'm short these, and it's, again, similar logic to Devon. The trend is down, but it's been going up for the last 2 weeks. And let's not forget, we're in a crazy bull market, and a crazy bull market, all sorts of stuff gets dragged higher. But I think that's a fair enough short. Devon Energy. NYCB. New York Community Bank. Didn't that get hammered this week? Okay. Would you be brave enough to go long? No. I got no interest in going long. I can't remember what the news was. I saw it. I do dip into Wall Street bets on Reddit now and again, which is always entertaining. But I've just put, so there's a Financial Times headline. New York Community Bancorp talks about it's turned the corner. It received $1 billion lifeline from a consortium of big name investors. Blah blah blah. So it had capital needs after its acquisition of Signature Bank pushed its assets above the regulatory threshold. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I suppose the risk reward is good, isn't it? If you bought them at 370 and they go back to where they were at the beginning of the year, you double your money and a bit more. If they go bust, you lose everything. So I don't know. I mean, it's it's too volatile for me. This is daily candle. And what did it do on Tuesday? A high of 325, a low of 275. It's 20% swing in a day for a bank stock is pretty crazy, isn't it? So yeah, it's not one for me, but interesting to see how it all gets resolved. Could you mention your thoughts on euro? Yeah, we did look at that. I mean, similar to the pound, isn't it? The big trend is up. I'd buy the dip if we get one. This is quite an interesting level, isn't it? Was it the interest rates in Europe yesterday? Is that where we had the volatility? That would make sense. So if I was a buyer, the closest I'd have my stop is below yesterday's low as a very minimum. I'd rather have it a bit deeper. But it looks positive, doesn't it, for now? So much, of course, hinges on what this US dollar is going to do. So let's see what happens with that. But that looks, interesting. I think the old euro against the dollar. Yeah, but I'd buy the dip on that. Overbought on the old RSI down here. It's a bit overbought. But of course, markets can stay overbought on the RSI and carry on going up. So personally, I tend not to worry about that stuff too much. So yeah. Aussie dollar, US dollar. Let's have a look at that. Aussie dollar, US dollar. It's a big downtrend, isn't it? Let's have a look. So the big trend for the Aussie against the US dollar is down like that. What would you do? I don't know. I don't know, because it's a bit, and again, it's a bit sideways over the last 6 to 8 months, isn't it? I don't know. It's a bit scrappy for me. If I had to do anything at the moment, I'd be a buyer. I don't know where I put my stop though. Probably at the side of 65.60. But I mean, it was going down. It's really turned it around, isn't it? Since Wednesday, since that US dollar weakness. So I'd rather buy a dip. But I think there are easier markets to trade, is what I would say. I'd never say trading is easy, but there are definite easier markets to trade, like the S&P. Just buy it and forget about it. Don't do that, obviously. But yeah, Aussie dollar, US dollar is, I think, a tricky one at the moment for me. Tesla and Apple, is the downtrend intact? Oh, do you remember? Actually, we'll have a look at Palantir in a minute on that. But Tesla. It is, isn't it? It's just, I mean, an aggressive trade would be to be a buy. I think I did buy these the other week, didn't I? We're down on those at the moment. And 15 quid on those in the old YouTube account. Up 258 quid on that one. Nice. Yeah, it is. I'd be in no hurry to buy Tesla at the moment. I mean, big support down here, isn't it? 150 to 175. I mean, an aggressive trade would be to be a buyer at 178 with a stop at 150. So if I had to do a trade, that's what I would do. So I'd take the view. They fell on earnings, didn't they? They fell on the earnings. They moved a bit lower. But this sort of 175 level is sort of holding. But yeah, tricky one for me. So I don't know. What was the other one? Apple. I mean, we did have a quick look at those, didn't we? Apple. I think that might be interesting for next week, Apple. So what have they done, Apple? So when we had all-time highs, that is all-time highs in the summer. It had the briefest of looks through in December. And here we are. If you looked at Apple over the last 6 months, it's just sideways, isn't it? So if you are trading the range, you'd be a buyer. I'd be a buyer. I'd rather buy something that was trending. What did I buy yesterday? I can't remember. I'll look in a minute. But, you know, we're at the bottom of the range. If I was a buyer at 171, I put a stop maybe at, I don't know, 160 or something, assuming the lows from October were going to hold, would be the trade I would do. So, yeah. But the trend, you know, I mean, we do. I mean, we do have. If we go right back to 2016, or even actually, no, even back here. The long term trend for Apple is up, isn't it? But you know, this trend looks to be well and truly over, and we're just all a bit sideways, really, aren't we, for Apple? On the subject of trades I've done in the past and forgotten about, last year I did a trade on Palantir, and it would have been through one of these live streams in the account I was using back then. Forgot all about it, and it's still running. It's up $665. So that would have been a $100 risk trade, I think, that I would have done. I think I probably did it perhaps in October last year, and this is real money. This is my money that we did it in the YouTube account. But that's done really well. And again, it shows you, you know, trading does not have to be stupidly short term. You know, you don't need to jump in and out of markets 10 times a day, although it is exciting. You know, the way I would much rather, God, find a General Electric every week and just ride the trend. Yeah. So it is, you know, don't be sucked into thinking that trading is all about day trading, because it isn't. You know, the trading bit that I'm enjoying the most at the moment is this longer term stock stuff I'm doing, because it's just, obviously the market's going up, so it's easier than if the market's going sideways. But it's great running about 42, 45 different trades and just managing the risk, you know. And I can see the account I trade them in, it's jumped to all-time highs again today, because, you know, because they carry on going. So yeah, for me, you know, what I look for in a stock is a trend. I mean, Google's interesting. Even though Google has been going down since the end of Jan, it hasn't taken out what for me is the major low in December, around 129. You know, so for Google, this would be a buy the dip trade for me, for example, in Google. You know, and there's so much, for me, the sort of setups I look for and talk about in the WhatsApp group and talk about on the trading course. There are so many of them in US stocks. Axon's been a really good performer. I can't remember when I bought those. Hang on a second. 9th of Feb. So 9th of Feb, bought Axon. Again, you know, so if we go back to the 9th of February, which was about here somewhere. Yeah, in there. So I bought them because the trend is up, right? So the trend is up. So what am I going to do? I'm going to be a buyer, aren't I? So I bought them at 270. And here we are at 320. They've had a great result on earnings, and they've carried on pushing higher. You know, so for me, I'd much rather trade things that are doing that. Workday, I bought those yesterday. The trend is up. Bang, bang, bang. They got clobbered on earnings the other week. But a bit like Google, they're holding above a major low. So for me, I thought that was an interesting trade. You know, they don't all work out. Like I say, I was short this lot, HSIC. I got stopped in those. You know, but that's trading. They're not all going to be winners. But what we want to do, I love this General Electric chart, is find the odd General Electric now and again. You know, General Electric makes up for 3-4 losers. You know, so it's, you know, it goes back, you know, with trading, you don't have to be right all the time to make money. You know, if you know, when I've talked about my historical performance, about 58% of my trades work out. You know, but the idea is the ones that do work out really well, and they make up for some of the losers. I don't know why I started rambling on about that, but anyway. CRH, what's that? CRH PLC. Yep, trend is up. What a cracking chart that is. The only question I'd have, where'd you put the stop? An aggressive stop for me. They've gapped higher on earnings, so I would go just before earnings, the other side of 77. I'd probably rather have a wider stop, but I would be a buyer of that. I'd rather have a dip than a doodah. Chipotle, however you say it. Tomato. Same again, great run, the old Chipotles. Where would your stop go? I don't know. Perhaps the other side of 2400. I don't know. I'd rather buy the dip again, but cannot argue with that trend. Meta, the old Facebook. Oh my God, it's gone like a rocket, isn't it? Look at that. Since it broke the old highs at 400, 385, look at that go. Amazing. It's up about, what is it up? 25% odd again. Since, it's incredible, isn't it? A company like Meta to put on that much market value yet again. Mind you, Nvidia puts on a lot of market value, and is it still the third biggest company in the NASDAQ? Or is it, I'm going to have a look now, or is it bigger than that now? Oh, hold on a second. Let's wait for this to load. Let's have a look. Is Nvidia must be in the S&P, mustn't it? Here we go. Let's have a look. Nvidia. Sort by market cap. It's the third largest. So Apple and Microsoft are still bigger, but Nvidia is bigger than Amazon. There's Meta, number 7. So Nvidia is a $2.4 trillion company. I think that's as of last night's close, I think. And what was the other one? Axon, that's the one. Is that the one I've got? Axon, I think. The one I just talked about. Yes, Axon. Yeah, so I'm in that. I've got a trading stop on that. I'd rather buy the dip. You know, the risk is the dip doesn't come. If I was going to buy it now, I would put a stop the other side of the earnings low, 274, which is still a wide stop. It's a 15% stop because the thing has moved so far. But yeah, I'd buy that. Ferrari, good uptrend. Ferrari's done incredibly well, hasn't it? So when did they come to the market? So they came to the market back here in 2016. Was it then? That sounds about right. At $58, and they're at $425. Yeah, great uptrend. All-time highs for Ferrari just in late February. So if we look here, there we go. I'd rather buy the dip. If I was buying it now, 360 stop, which is a 15% stop on Ferrari. And compare with Porsche. Stock, there we go. It's interesting, isn't it? I think it's interesting anyway. Because, you know, given the cost of living crisis, all that sort of stuff, clearly Ferrari is somewhat immune. Ferrari's profitability is somewhat immune from the stuff that affects the buyers of Porsches, which again is not exactly a cheap car, is it? So I thought that was an interesting. Maybe that's turning the corner now, Porsche. They've taken a bath on those, well, they haven't taken a bath, the customer's taken a bath on those Taycans, the electric Porsches. But that's quite an interesting one for next week, maybe. Porsche, I don't know. MCore Group, EME. I know Kev, so look at those. MCore Group. Oh, what do they do? Industrial services, engineering and construction. So they're up about not quite 50% in the last couple of months. Where would you buy them? I mean, they've blasted off on earnings, haven't they? So they beat earnings by 25%, MCore. I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, I would have been a buyer. This is the Harry hindsight trade as usual. The trend was up though. You know, this is why for me, trend following is good, because if you get surprises, they do tend to be in the direction of the trend. If I was looking at them at 220, I'd still be a buyer, and here they are at 330. Where does the stop go? I don't know. What would you do? What would I do? If I had to buy them now, where would I put my stop? The other side of 290. The gap, the earnings gap, I think, which again is still a $30 stop. So it's still nearly a 10% stop, but the thing's gone like a rocket, hasn't it? As usual, I'd rather buy the pullback. The risk is, if you wait for the pullbacks, that the pullbacks don't come. So, yeah, but that really has been an absolute star performer, hasn't it? And that's it. If there are no more questions, what time is it? 3:20 my time. We're done. So, lots to watch. I mean, stock markets, you know, they're just relentless, isn't it? These stock markets do not stop. NASDAQ and S&P at all-time highs. Japan, all-time highs the other day. The DAX, the Germans, all-time highs today. FTSE, doesn't care. Russell, breaking out. Italians, mamma mia, all-time highs. China maybe turning around. Yeah, there's so much going on in stock markets. Bitcoin, just underneath the all-time highs. Are we going to see it break? Dollar getting clobbered. which means the pound has been lifted. Lots to watch there. If we get a pullback next week, do we see the buyers come back in? Gold all-time highs. Everything's all-time highs. We've never had it so good. Yeah, loads to watch. In all seriousness, there's an awful lot to watch. And my approach is you can't trade it all. I'm very happy with the approach I've got in US stocks. My short-term trades on indices, do maybe 3 of those a week, and still do intermediate trades, maybe a couple of those a week as well. And I'm quite happy that without trying to trade everything that's moving. But for me next week, the focus absolutely will still be in stock markets. So loads to watch. Citigroup. There's a few late runners coming in. Citigroup. I remember looking at these. I would. I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because it had been losing since June 21 into August 23, just drifting. I think we have it's absolutely turned the corner. This year, I would say, it's turned the corner. So I would be a buyer. I think that's quite an interesting one, Citigroup, for a turnaround stock thing. So if I was a buyer of Citigroup, I would want a stop loss. I would probably go $50 on Citigroup. I think that's an interesting trade, though. If we thought it was going to build a real recovery from here, there's a lot of upside. If I was, targeting, I don't really do targets, but if I was coming up with a target, I'd target sort of $69, $70, which is another $12 from where we are now. So I think that's interesting, Citigroup, assuming $50 holds. I think that's an interesting turnaroundy trade. ASX, the Australian, we looked at that last week, didn't we? From memory. And I think it was interesting because it's breaking out, wasn't it? The Australian 200. And it is, and it continues to go. Even the Aussies are at all-time highs. And they've got to fight the fact that they're upside down anyway. And even their chart's going up. So, that's been quite interesting, hasn't it? That Aussie index, because this high was in place in August 21, holds again December 21 and April 22 and Feb 23 and December 23, and bang, finally breaks. So that's an interesting market. I should pay attention to that, actually. Let's add that into the watch list, because that looks like, again, maybe that's the first steps of the Aussie index having a bit of a move. Let's see. We'll have a look at that. So if I was a buyer of the Aussie, what would I do? So again, just on the daily charts, perhaps trying to catch the bigger move here, I would go probably 7,400 as a stop. So you've got 400 points risk and a bit more. But if this does develop into a much bigger move, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? So I will have to pay more attention to the Aussie index. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's it. So we'll wrap things up there. So I'm not here next week. But if you want to carry on getting, to be sensible for a second, what I think is pretty insightful market opinion from someone who does actually trade every day, rather than someone who just talks about it, go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, use the code YouTube. You can try the WhatsApp group for a month. It costs you 40 quid. If you don't like it, you can leave. Most people stay. But go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Let's see where we are then with markets. Any questions, feel free to drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up there and we'll see where all these markets are in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, good luck with your trading, and see you then.